Firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land that we're meeting on. Pay my respects to the different brothers and sisters, elders and past and present, and the brothers and sisters that are here today, sharing their knowledge with one another. I must first say that I come here today not on my own accord, but on behalf of my people, the Ngemba people, the Ngemba elders. Otherwise, I can't speak on Ngemba issues without their authority. I come here commissioned with that authority to try and advance their aspirations around this movement, around data sovereignty, for their well-being and for the betterment of the people that live within our country, so we understand that what's going on and the people can then participate to the welfare of what's going on in their country. I'd just like to share a story of I'll just introduce Alex as well. Alex has been in Brewarrina, and she's came up there and sort of showed us that it's important to be a part of the movements that are taking place nationally and within the states if we want to be able to allow our cultures to coexist with the different movements that are taking place. And Alex has shown us and our people and helped our people get to events like these ones, both in different states, on a national level and on an international level, so our people can share their story and also allow our culture to coexist. So Alex has been a big part of helping myself and my nation group try and find their feet in the nation rebuilding process for the Ngemba people. Yeah.
I prefer to think of it as just doing the grunt work, as Maggie put it, but I feel very privileged to be working with the Ngemba people, so thank you, Jason. The focus of our presentation today is to share with you, I won't say the beginning of the Ngemba community's data journey, because the Ngemba people and all Indigenous people have been data holders, knowledge and knowledge sharers for tens of thousands of years. But the beginning of their journey within the contemporary Indigenous data sovereignty framework. And we want to share with you their priorities, and we also want to share with you their frustrations and needs at the beginning of this journey. And their priority is, and it came out through workshops that we've discussed with them, as you'll see, is for nation rebuilding and for governance. So data sovereignty and data governance for governance and nation rebuilding. Yep.
I just want to share a story with you just before I move on how data became important to me as a Ngemba man. I worked with the State Department of Primary Industries in the Biosecurity Unit as an Aboriginal liaison officer. And there was a number of different portfolios within that organisation or the government framework. And I heard these different colleagues talking about redress for collecting information about specific animal groups, like koalas. Now, I was really interested because they were talking about, sustaining, or collecting this data so that this species could coexist with the movement of the contemporary Australia. And I was interested to think, and I started thinking about my own people, the Ngemba people. And I said, well, they can collect information about the koala on where he lives, what his habitat is, population demographics, yet my Ngemba people, I couldn't find any information about my mob. So that really concerned me because I live in the most disadvantaged community in New South Wales with huge investments going into First Nations people's affairs. So for me, I got really concerned with that, so I got out of the bureaucracy and said, I'm going back to my people. And I left a huge paying job to go back and work for nothing for my mob. And that's what I do, still today. But anyway, that's the story of how I got to here now, working on behalf of my people.
And here is Jason's mob.
Yeah. And this is a map, and this is interesting as well. This is a Tyndale map from 1974 about my people and different other peoples within Australia. It was a map. I know it's a controversial map. It's data that's there. And this different data that's there tells different things, but it was, it evolved from people that done studies on our peoples over time. But this data's been used, okay, to portray a description of our people. And our people within my country, okay, the Ngemba people now, as they continue to collect data on the different First Nations people, have disappeared from the maps. The new maps, without any consultation, without any evidence to our, or any consultation with our elders of why we just seem to disappear from the current new maps. So these are, concerning issues for me around data and concerning for my people when it comes to, data.
And so I guess a point is that the Ngemba Nation have always been knowledge holders, and they know they are Ngemba people through their customs and cultures, and also through their generations. And they've always had knowledge and used knowledge and shared knowledge and had structures for that. This is just some of the knowledge, the ancient traditional knowledge and that they have, and the ways it's stored. So first of all, knowledge of how to work with the land.
Yeah, this is just a picture of our country. Many people would have seen it. It's one of the oldest structures made by First Nations people in this country. It's very famous, the First Nation, it's the Ngemba fish traps. But when we talk about fish traps, even the naming of our fish traps has never been consulted with our people, with the Ngemba people. They take it upon themselves to take away our cultural identity and name it the Aboriginal fish traps without any consultation with the Ngemba elders. And they're really concerned with this type of behaviour, of how we have no jurisdiction around data and how things evolve without us having a voice. And when people don't have a voice, they grieve. They grieve. And it's very, very concerning when you see our people, when they grieve, they start to do things which contribute to poor health because they're not being listened to. So this one of the most famous sites is not even being named. They're not even being given the jurisdiction to say what it's called, the Ngemba people. It's been made up by these different people that feel that they have the power to say what it is. So I'm just flagging how important it is to understand when we're talking about data sovereignty, the sovereignty again, who does it represent?
So other ancient records of knowledge, apart from markings on the land, are, of course, drawings. This is a recording of ancient data, and this is in Mount Gundabooka, some rock art of what is thought to be the fish traps. And this is, as Jason said, these are his elders at the fish traps, at the rock art, wondering how their knowledge will be stored and passed down through generations, and grieving and needing to re-implement structures to be able to hold and store their knowledge. Yeah. So this is the rationale behind the project that the Ngemba people want to do. Yeah. So would you like to...
Yeah, you look, and the Ngemba people at the moment, the current governance models that control our data at the moment within the state of New South Wales, PMNC, Department of Aboriginal Affairs, New South Wales Aboriginal Lands Council, Native Title Services Corporation, local government, local council, and the Muripaki Regional Assembly and Community Worker Party, which I'm actually current. We've attached the Ngemba Nation to try and have a voice somewhere. But it's not our cultural model, but it's a model that we have to use currently. But what I want to say is that these different models, through the huge investment of dollars that's gone into, like I say, it's important that I be frank in the way, because the way I tell my story, because it's what the people want me to say from the grassroots that are suffering under the current models and the current systems. So the data that's been collected has no quality assurance to it, to what it's doing. The governance structures within it don't say who it represents. It's not clear. So the First Nations people that are falling under these regimes or these different governance models, and the huge investment that's going in there into those models, it's not encouraging that our next generation are actually not up to speed with the knowledge of who they are through the education systems. They're not understanding how to access health or how to be involved in local government or into improving their cultural health through local government and signage and stuff like that there. It's really concerning that this sovereignty, who it represents.
So a clear example of the way these governance models affect the collection of data for the Ngemba community is this. Yeah. This is Aboriginal Affairs New South Wales collection of data through the census and representation of data through the census. And you can see clearly, first of all, it's a community portrait that's based on the colonised community of Brewarrina. It doesn't name the Ngemba nation. Then when we go into this community portrait, we see that it says that in the 2011 census, Brewarrina's Aboriginal population was counted at 609. Now, there's two issues with this. First of all, what is an Aboriginal population? Brewarrina is made up of Ngemba, Yuwalawai, Murrawari, Barkindji people, and Jason and his people would like to see those demographics counted. The second issue is that this data is inaccurate. As you'll see down in the third point there, the ABS estimates that the census undercounted the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander population by 17%. So it's actually quite useless. And the undercounting happens because, would you like to explain why the undercounting happens?
For me, the demographics and the way that they conduct their business has not been, first and foremost, they're putting the cart before the horse, the way I see it. The First Nation peoples have no part in the planning of how the questions have been asked. The First Nations people, that when we sit around our working parties in our governance structures, what they say is, how are the Ngemba people going? How are the Barkindji people going? The Yuwalawai people going on country?
And off country.
And off country, but on Ngemba country. But these demographics are not what the questions that have been asked, and this is why I'm very mindful of what the gentleman that opened the symposium, he talked about data being the gold. Now, it seems to me that we need to be very mindful in the way we move forward, because the bigger models, the governance models that have actually had control over data, First Nations data, and have been invested into heavily, the smaller governance groups are not being part of the movement, and they're not being redressed the same way. And so the proof in our data is that we're the most disadvantaged people in the state because we're not part of that movement.
And you can see how the local models aren't being redressed in this, just drilling down. This is how the governance structures operate at the level of the region in New South Wales. So do you want to talk about the Murdi-Parky Regional Assembly there? It's made up of 16 communities. One of them is Brewarrina. Yeah,
so we've got community working parties in each community. There's 16 communities within the local government area or the Murdi-Parky Regional Assembly. 16 chairs come around the table and advocate, but it's not a nation-based model. It's a model that we have to attach ourselves to have a voice. But again, what's happening through that model, the data that's been collected is not reflecting what the data should be reflecting. And we're not protecting the nation groups or the heritage of the different nation people within those colonised communities. And the data movement and everything seems to be not taking into account the cultural existence of the different peoples. We need to allow our people to breathe and to be able to culturally exist with any movement that takes place. And this is what my people want me to share with the people that are here today, is that it is important that no cultural extinction takes place through these movements. If we're going to have committees, our governance structures, local, nation group governance structures have got to be attached to them, and we've got to have a voice in it, because the way that business has been done previously, our people and our cultures are under threat, like the different species.
So we have some ways about moving forward on this, and we talked a lot in the first panel. They talked a lot about the need for governance structures to actually collect data. So I think there's two things here. One, that appropriate governance structures are needed to actually get the data and govern the data, but then the data itself can also help define and grow stronger governance structures. So there's a kind of a bit of a chicken and an egg situation there. This is the governance structure that Jason and his people are operating with because that's what they have. So they're working within the community working party structure, even though it's a government-imposed structure and doesn't take into account their cultural definitions. They've attached the Ngemba name to the community working party structure, and that's the governance structure within which we propose to build this data hub, and within which we're starting to build the data hub. So we have a vision for the data hub, and it's the development of a nation-owned and operated data and research hub. This will monitor and evaluate the maintenance of culture and heritage and the well-being of the Ngemba Nation for self-determining, evidence-based, local decision-making and servants evaluation. So data can contribute to evidence-based local decision-making, and data can also help define the self. And the self in this case is the Ngemba Nation, so it can contribute toward, to take people down the path towards self-determination and nation rebuilding. The desired outcomes of this hub are, first of all, and as you've heard, the recognised and well-structured nation-based governance. It's a possibility to share research and knowledge within Australia. If we set up a model that we could expand across the region to other CWPs. Outcomes are a range of data collection for the Ngemba Nation, these are just some that we've talked about with the elders, cultural and natural asset mapping, external data gathering and storage, which we've talked a lot about as well, gathering data back, repatriating data, and getting data on Ngemba people off-country. So this is an on-country hub, but it would also be able to speak to people off-country, which is a great way of keeping people in touch with culture. There's also opportunities, of course, for training and employment and economic development, and these are all the things that the Ngemba community are excited about. Yeah. Okay, yep. So we've got a plan, and what we did was we tried to sell this plan to the government, and we dropped a line in and we didn't get a lot of action back, but so we're just starting it ourselves for now, and we're kind of refining the plan. But we need to develop a framework on country from the ground, and I know heaps of other people are developing frameworks, but there was that great discussion of needing to do this from, the bottom and the top, or, the top and the bottom, however way you want to see it. And so from the ground up, we want to develop principles of data governance for the Ngemba people themselves, a structure, a physical hub. They need computers to do this. The CWP is operating off the smell of an oily rag. They get nothing to govern their people. So we need actual physical infrastructure. What we've started to institute the board, and that's a board of Ngemba elders. And then the second stage is to run a small pilot program within this. We've actually read the Yaru project, and we're so grateful to be here with you. And they operated from within a PBC, is that right? From within a prescribed body corporate? Alongside other structures? Yeah. Right, sorry. Yeah, so we're building those structures now as we go, and using this to build those structures. And then we want to run a pilot program from within it, and then we want to transfer knowledge through research reporting and evaluation. Yeah, that's right. Do you want to?
Yeah, well, this was the model. The initial model or framework for trying to get some governance around how we would capture our data on country. The whole concept was to do a number of things on a number of fronts, is to create some space for us in research, our Ngemba mob, train our local people, have a succession plan and a framework for our next generation to inherit. And also have, in this model, had a review process within it, where the Ngemba elders were the chief reviewers of any information that was to be taken out of country or to be used or to be interpreted about Ngemba country or Ngemba people. So this was the type of model that was accepted by the local traditional owners that are there. Yeah, and I must say, just in the local town of Brewarrina, because there are different communities within the nation group itself, which makes it a lot more complex if you're looking at the whole nation group concept. But this was a community nation group model.
And what you see there is, like Jason said, it always goes back to the elders and the community, which is the purple up the top. Something I really want to speak to is that orange bubble, which is a university partnership, but also other partnerships. So it was in the brief that the symposium would talk about frustrations. One is trying to build partnerships and trying to come from completely having no infrastructure and no money to try and actually connect and build partnerships. So I guess we'd ask people who come from an institutional base to reach out, and we're so grateful that Uni of Melbourne has invited us here, because we need those partnerships because we don't have that infrastructure to start with. And also that the blue down the bottom is the capacity building. So we want to be able to train young Ngemba people in collecting their own data. Yep. And we've started. So we started working out what the pilot program is going to be. And so we've had 2 workshops because we're trying to feed back information about data sovereignty to the Ngemba people. The first one was just an information session about data sovereignty and to make sure that we had the elders okay to go ahead with this. And the second one was actually a workshop looking at Ngemba cultural health and trying to assess what our first step in that pilot program would be, trying to get a smallish project so we could actually start building partnerships around it. And we've got our project plan now for that. So we had 10 Ngemba elders and community leaders coming, and the aim was to give the Ngemba elders the power to ask a question. And there's been a lot of talk about that. You know, you can go and ask a question of Indigenous people and get them to, you know, collect the data and then help organise it. But to give Indigenous communities themselves the power to ask the question is shaping the research and the data. So in order to gather what question they wanted to ask, we asked them a question: what would a healthy Ngemba culture look like? They came up with 11 themes, and the first one was decision-making structures. And then, so we got them to order them in priority. These are the 3 top priorities: decision-making, land and education. We didn't go in to that particular workshop to talk about nation rebuilding. We wanted to know, first of all, what question do you want us to ask for the pilot program? What data do you want us to collect? But they decided that decision-making was the number 1 priority. They said the elders are not being listened to, and we need to know what they want so that we can start building those structures. And so our pilot project is now going to be going and asking elders a series of questions as determined by this board. And they got really excited about everything, and they said, we can call ourselves the Council of Ngemba Elders. And I guess the point is that we went into this workshop just asking about data gathering and explaining about data governance. And we came out with this nation rebuilding plan because data governance and data sovereignty go hand in hand with nation rebuilding.
And I'd just like to finish off on that there, like as far as that part there. One of the elders, when I went and asked him to come to the workshop, and he said, son, he said, I'm tired of it all. He said, I'm tired of all this. I've had enough. He said, they don't listen to us. He said, when we say something, it's got no authority anymore. These other models, Lands Councils, Netscorp, Aboriginal Affairs, they're the chiefs now. These fellas here are dismantling our authority on country. And I said, Unc, just come along. I said, I'm going to keep fighting for you as far as this is concerned. I'll flag your concerns, Unc. And when he came along, at the end of it, he said to me, he said, son, he said, I feel that there's some hope there for us. He said, it's good to see a young fella still fighting for our mob. And to me, that's what gives you the drive and the motivation to travel around with no money. You know, I don't come from any institution. I come from a poor family. I come there and I do it on behalf of my elders because I love my people, and we're still here. And we want to be part of the movement, but we want to do it right. And the people's voices have got to be heard.
Thank you.
Thank you.